Hi everyone, welcome to my video on passwords. Love them, hate them, protect them. I am Deanna Belkadi, a student at Metropolitan State University. This video is part of the Cyber 332 Computer Security course led by Dr. Faisal Kaleem. Quick disclaimer, this video is solely for educational purposes and I'm not liable for any damages that could be caused using this information or demonstrations. Introduction. Passwords touch nearly everything. They're everywhere. Almost every system, site, and document need them. They protect your most valuable information and can easily be hacked in many cases. The number of passwords will only continue to increase as is the risk of hacking them. So how do you create and maintain secure passwords? Everybody has advice, but what is really required and how to manage them all? This video will walk you through what is needed, how to store them, and tools that can help you manage it. Are your passwords out of control? Do the number of passwords drive you crazy? Do you struggle to manage them all? Password management is difficult, even if you're not worried about security and hacking. So how many passwords do you have? In 2020, a study says the average user has around 100 passwords. But from a study in 2019, which stated that the average number of passwords were 70 to 80, which would be a 25% increase for passwords in just 1 year. So how do you maintain and deal with 100 strong passwords for security purposes? So 66% of computer users think it's essential to protect their passwords. Work passwords, 66, and 63% is on their personal passwords. But according to the latest password statistics, 7 out of 10 people know the consequences of bad passwords and password breaches, both in personal and professional environments. Even though they believe the password protection is important, 51% of respondents admit that their multiple password management is too difficult. A single password is used across 5 accounts on average. So if you were ever wondering how many or how often passcodes are used, there's your answer. The days of relying on a single password for all accounts is behind us. So most people do have a few different passwords that they use, but yet password use statistics show that we still have a long way to go. Ideally, we should be using a unique and complex password for each different account that we have. Personally, my number is much higher for my family. Are you like us? We have a select couple passwords that I use for everything with slight variations in letters, numbers, characters, but primarily they're standard across all the different applications that we use. 59% of Americans have included a name or date of birth in their passwords from an online account. So you take information that is available out in a social profile somewhere online that anybody could get to quite easily by a simple Google search of that person. And then they use that information in a password, which makes that password really unsecure. Things like their kids' names, your birth date, those kind of, any kind of dates that you would have, anniversary dates, all of those can lead to very unsecure passwords. So according to the statistics, 73% of respondents consider forgetting their passwords the most frustrating aspect of account security. But what else is there out there? I mean, more than just the forgetting the password, there's other frustrations too, as well as answering security questions, usernames and passwords, entering the PIN number on the phone to get into your phone, and entering one-time passwords via text message, email accounts, etc. So when typical passwords like password or football get rejected, 75% of the people resort to simple alteration. So just changing one character, changing the letter A to the @ symbol, changing the letter O to a 0. And that doesn't really help come with the unique passwords. So you can see there that 3 out of 4 people change only one letter of their one letter or character in their password to make it unique for another application, which makes that password super easy to guess. Risk statistics. So it only takes 10 minutes to crack a lowercase password that is 6 characters long. So this is passwords that have no complexity to it, all lowercase characters, no capital letters, having no numbers, no special characters, etc. So to avoid falling in this trap, you should follow the best practices, which I'll discuss later on. So what kind of attacks are there that involve passwords? So brute force attack is where somebody takes and tries to, just by brute force, enter passwords and try different combinations, hitting or missing to gain access. It's trial and error. And then as part of brute force, there's also credential stuffing, where it's very similar to brute force. However, they take hacked passwords, stolen credentials, things that they were able to gain somewhere else, and then take those credentials and start using them and trying brute force attack with the passwords that are stolen for multiple accounts across various platforms. So because of the number of hacks over the last several years and the massive number of compromised credentials, they can just take one single major provider breach and get millions of account numbers from them and then use those through to find passwords to other systems. Another type of password brute force attack is password spraying. So they can take a large number of common passwords on a small number of user accounts and just try them across that, or even just on one account. The attackers can go to great lengths to avoid detection during password spraying by trying to keep them under the login attempt so that they're not noticed. The next type is dictionary attacks. So it's a type of brute force attack, but it's where it's using commonly used words, a database of passwords, commonly used passwords, phrases, etc., to try the same thing. Brute force attack, but using similar or common passwords, common words. Keyloggers, they can either be hardware or software, typically a malware, and then they get them installed on your device, and you get them installed on your device, and then they log the keystrokes that you do on the computer, and they're able to possibly get your passwords and login information through that spyware. The man in the middle is a traffic interception. So they eavesdrop, they try to get in, and they impersonate a legitimate third party and so you think that you're conversing with the proper location that you wanted, but it isn't, it's somebody else. And so normally you'd think that HTTPS or having some kind of secure transmission would help that, which it does help, but it's not guaranteed because they can do what's called SSL hijacking. And so they redirect that traffic over a bridge that comes in between the destinations so that they can direct it to an unsecure source and intercept the passwords that way. And then most of us are very familiar with phishing, where you get emails where they're trying to look like, or they do actually look exactly like a trusted source that you have, whether it be your bank account, the website looks the same, they use the same logos, the same form. And then when you click the link, it's going to direct to a website that they can capture that data and get your credentials. Sometimes it can even be your credit card. It doesn't always have to go after your username and password, but they could be looking for your credit card as well. So what are some best practices to use? So 5 tips to maintain good password hygiene is to go over all the accounts that you have and delete the ones you no longer use. So the reason behind this is you may have long-standing passwords or long-standing accounts out there that you don't use, where you use that password elsewhere. If you've used that password elsewhere and they can get to the one account that you don't use anymore, then they'll have that password and be able to take that and use that in other areas trying to gain that access. So reducing the amount of accounts that you have, especially if you don't use them anymore, is a good hygiene practice. Another option is to update all your passwords and use unique, complicated, and complicated passwords, complex passwords, so that they can't be hacked or at least greatly reduce the risk of being hacked. Also using two-factor authentication if you can, setting up a password manager, and monitoring your account for suspicious activity regularly. So when you use a password generator, when you want to have a complex account, you can use a password generator, and it helps you either store them, generate them, complex, unique passwords. It is recommended that you have a password manager at that time to try to help you remember them, because they are going to be long, complex passwords that will be difficult to remember just with our memories the way they are. And if you ever notice anything unusual on your account, be sure to change your password right away. Don't wait. All right, the next area that I'm going to talk about is complexity. So imagine creating a password by flipping a coin 4 times. You can type, every time you flip it, you type either H for heads or T for tails. And when it lands on tails, then document the T. So in one example, let's say we flip the coin 4 times. So we would have heads, tails, heads, heads. When you want to have password complexity, you're going to want to make sure that the password entropy, which is the measure of randomness, is high enough to be able to not easily guess that password. So in the case of the coin flipping, you would generate a possibility of 16 different passwords, which is, or 2 to the power of 4. So in that case, you would say the password has 4 entropy bits. So provided that the hackers know that there's only those 2 symbols available, heads and tails, which they may not, but in this case, let's pretend that that's what the example is. It would only take a computer 1/3 of a tenth of a blink of an eye to try all the possible combinations. So you'll see here that a password with 60 entropy bits would have a combination of over 1 quadrillion possible combinations. That you would need to have a brute force attack for, which would take quite some time to be able to hack. It's pretty considered pretty secure. So how do you get that number of entropy bits? How do you get there? So passphrases are really a way to go. It gives you the complexity and still being able to memorize them at the same time. Makes it much easier to be able to do both. So what's a passphrase? It's a series of words instead of characters. So right now, the most common place that I have seen it personally is with crypto wallets and using passphrases that use up to like 12 passphrase words for each one, which is quite complex. So you can see here in the depiction what the normal, like if we're trying to use an upper lower case, replace symbols, that kind of stuff, but yet make it a phrase that we can remember. It's very difficult to get a complex password while being able to remember it. Down here, you can see that it says, through 20 years of effort, we've successfully trained everyone to create passwords that are hard for humans to remember, but for computers that are easy to figure out. And that's not where we want to be at all. So the depiction here will show you and walk through the illustration of how does the passphrase work. You put 4, 5, 6, up to however many number of words that you want to use to get that level of randomness that you really want. You can also insert things like spaces between the words or special characters between the words, which will make it even that much more difficult to guess. But yet it's relatively pretty easy to remember yourself, especially the randomness of it. You can really remember those phrases pretty good. So protection. What is the safest way to keep your passwords? How do you keep track of all of them? So according to Brian Krebs from Krebs on Security, the most secure method for remembering your passwords is to create a list of every website for which you have a password. And next to each one, write your login name and a clue that has a meaning only for you. He also admits that his long-term views of changing or of keeping your passwords written down has changed. So while we can keep our most sensitive passwords in our head, that's only okay for a couple passwords, at least in my case. I can't remember them all, no way. So I need to be able to have something that I can keep track of my passwords. So you can have them on paper. Having them on paper, definitely low tech, low risk, unless you have somebody who is planning to break into your home and steal them. But for the average user, we're not going to be looked at to have somebody come into our house and try to locate our passwords. Obviously, if you keep them on paper, it's best to keep them out of the sight of people. Don't paste them on your wall. Don't keep them where they're obviously very easy to find if I was looking for a password. So find a location where you would not think people would look for them and store them there. Also keep your most important ones locally on you. You can put them in your wallet, something like that, but try to hide it and put some kind of memorable piece of information that can help you decide or figure out what that password was based on the hint that you left yourself. The other way that you can do it is using a password manager, which is what my family is going to start doing, and what I'll be demonstrating later is how to use that. One other part to password security is multi-factor authentication. So this is not the end all be all. It's not going to completely protect you, but it is another layer of security to help try to make your password stronger. So multi-factor authentication is using something you know, something you have, and something you are, or a combination of those, two or more of those at any given time. So something you know would be your PIN, your password, your paraphrase, whatever that is. Something you have is a physical item, a badge, a key card, the key to your car, etc. And then something you are can be your biometric type stuff, your fingerprints, facial recognition, retinal scans. And like I said, this just adds another layer of security to the overall password that you're creating. So it doesn't mean you can use a super low complexity password and then use multi-factor authentication to bridge that, because there are ways also to be hacked on the multi-factor authentication. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate now how to use the password manager. So the password manager I chose based on reading different publications of top password managers, I chose RoboForm for my family. And so you'll see here, I have no current passwords at all in my logon or in my RoboForm password manager. Also here, you'll see Yahoo, which may or may not age me some, but that's okay. That's my password, or that's my email account. So I'm going to log into my email account, and I'm going to demonstrate how to add it to the password manager and how to generate a new password for it. So when I go to log in here, I'm currently signed out. I'll use my current password, which I have been told is weak, if I can remember it. Okay, so I enter my password, I come in, and then I get a notice, I hope, to save my password. It's still thinking. Oh, there it is. Okay, so save to RoboForm. I want to save it. So now my credentials are saved, and I'll close out, and I'll come over here, and you'll see here that I am, my credentials are now there. So if I was in RoboForm, I could just click here to log in, and it's going to automatically log me in, and I don't have to do anything. Oh, well, I got a security message, but that's not how I would typically do it either, or anyway, is I would come in and I would log back in the way that I would normally. I want to change my password because there are tools in here that can show you how weak your passwords are and if they're reused again in the full desktop version, which I'm not showing here. But I want to change it, and I really want to generate a complex password, one that I don't have to worry about being hacked necessarily. So I want something to help out on that. Oops. So I got to go here, account security, and access and security. I want to change my password. So now that I'm here, now I have this icon here for the robo form. And when I hover over it, I can say generate and fill and continue. Now I am going to save it because I want it to be saved inside my robo form. Okay, so now in here, I was able to, you can do things like copy or paste password, which I will illustrate here, is definitely a randomly generated password. Now I'm not going to keep this password, obviously, because I am recording it on here, but I just wanted to illustrate how it can generate that complex password, and then how it will store it for you in your repository. So I signed up for this. I now need to go and do this for all my different sites, pull them all into my password manager. And then this password manager can be stored on all of my devices. And then I will be able to manage them from there and go in and regenerate complex passwords, seeing as I am one of the few that do, or one of the many, I guess, that do use a similar password for multiple different areas. I would guess I have over 100 passwords. I would guess that I use no more than 5 across those 100 applications, even with my variations in my passwords. So definitely a candidate for this password manager. The other thing that I wanted to demonstrate while I'm here is how to check if you have had any kind of activity against your account. So there are tools out there. Let me flip back over here for a minute. Before I do that, I'll walk through these. So some tips for the password managers is, and for just in general, when you're going to use passphrases, don't use the same passphrase on any 2 accounts. Make sure that you choose a good master passphrase. So that's when you're going to sign up for a password manager, you do have to use a passphrase or a master passphrase. Now, that passphrase is recommended to not have stored electronically. Do not share that with anybody. And that will really control everything from there on. So if that password falls or fails or gets corrupted or gets hacked, that means all of your passwords then are in jeopardy. So really making sure that that is a strong passphrase and that you keep it somewhere safe so that it cannot be hacked, cannot be gotten to. Also, each and every time that you're given a chance to use 2-factor or multi-factor authentication, do it. Like I said earlier, it is not a fail-safe. It's not going to protect you solely, but it's another layer of security. And so, like with everything, security should come in layers. Keep as many layers as you can to make it more difficult to be able to gain your information. Also, one tip is to memorize the one password for your primary email address. The reason why you get locked out, you can't remember something, that is typically going to be where your one-time password, or that you can get more, get your account unlocked, comes to. So if for some reason you can't get into your password manager or something like that, then you are able to at least get into your email account to be able to reset that information. So what do you do if you have a compromised password? How do you know if you have a compromised password? So there are a couple sites, couple areas that you can use to help you manage that. So I've been pwned as an excellent tool if you want to dive into past data breaches to see if your email address or your phone number has been leaked out there anywhere. I'll show that in a minute. But there's other services too that offer a more proactive approach to tracking hacked information or getting system notifications when something happens. So breach alarm is, you use it the same way that you use I've been pwned, but it's an easy search site database. You can find past hacks and leaks, and then that's for free. But if you want to sign up and take that to the next level, I think it's like $30 annual subscription. And you can set that up to, they'll scan new hacks whenever they pop up and notify you. So that would give you a little bit more time to react to that versus you having to initiate and go actively go look for that information. The next one, and Securi, is a site that actually performs active scans on websites and searches for vulnerabilities that hackers might exploit. So if you're going to join or go to a site, you can check to see if it's deemed to be risky or not. If it is risky, it doesn't mean you don't have to use it or that you can't use it. It just means be aware that it's risky and do things to protect yourself, like change your password frequently after your use, whatever it is, so that you can assess that risk and minimize it. And then crazy but true, Google Chrome also has a way for tracking if your password has been alerted or in a breach or hack. So this was the first time I had seen this, that my password had been used in multiple locations and that it had been exposed. So that's what prompted me to be interested in this and start to dive in a little bit and try to figure out what can I do to protect my information and my family's information. But if you wanted to use this, it'd be pretty simple. You just go into your Chrome settings and into passwords, and then you can set the check passwords and check them now. And it'll alert you and just say your password has been seen in number of places or whatever the message is. But it's at least information. So all of this isn't fully comprehensive. It's not going to fully protect you, but it's ways that you can be active into your own security of your own passwords. That is all I had for my presentation. Thank you everyone for watching and have a great day.